Thank you so much. First of all, it's a great event. I'm here together with Roberto Musneci and many of our colleagues from the Aspen Institute, Romania, as a partner of this particular session, together with the Europuls and of course with this great organization which is thriving and is also feeding the growing appetite of Romanian public to complex issues and controversial issues. This is a healthy sign of a maturing democracy in our country, as the Aspen Institute is trying to encourage a conversation about the good society. This is an essential part of what we are, what we have as a mission, and it is also our thrust. This is a great panel. I will try not to speak too much, and not that much in introducing the topic, because we have here top professionals from various angles and walks of life, but to basically try to put the whole conversation in context. Cristian Pantazi was referring to the explosion of public interest around this topic. And what Greenpeace has done a few days ago has only highlighted the huge interest and the legitimate interest of all stakeholders around such a monumental project, which is connecting the first two large economies of the world. There is no need to say that the argument in favor of TTIP continues to remain valid. But the questions which have been raised and will continue to be raised even more aggressively and even more vocally should be taken into account. Because in my opinion, this is not as much about the TTIP, but it's about trust in governments, trust into big corporations, or lack of trust, the trust of the NGO sector, of the consumer associations or trade unions, and their voice should be respected and heard by the decision makers. So in the end, it's a matter about how global citizenry, and this time around European and US publics, including presidential hopefuls, are relating to such a complex issue. It's far more than TTIP. It's about the essence of the new conversation about a balance between government, business, and the civil sector in the global economy and in the 4.0 economy that the conference referred to in the morning. That's in essence the grand parameters of our conversation. There is also a growing concern in the public opinions. I was looking into some polls in Germany, where President Obama visited with Chancellor Merkel just a few days ago, making strongly, and I think in an articulated way, the case for TTIP. The German public opinion is today opposing TTIP at 45% of the German public, and it was only 25% of the public in Germany opposing TTIP in February 2014. There is a growing number of SME associations that are supposedly to be the main beneficiaries of this great, grand transatlantic trade agreement that are starting to be concerned about this. There is a growing number of consumer associations that are concerned about the environmental or other related consequences. And again, the findings that Greenpeace has revealed to the world is only increasing what I would call the second major issue, which is the issue of democratic ownership of such conversations and legitimacy of the ones who are negotiating on our behalf, be the European Commission or the Mr. Froman and the American government. This is an issue that has to be addressed, because if we lose the fight for getting the trust of our public opinions, then this issue will continue to unravel in a direction that I think will be detrimental to the transatlantic relationships and also to the future of the global economy. If we don't accept the reality that the public is nervous, is eager to know, and we have an obligation, I think, as decision makers in national parliaments, in national governments, in Brussels or in Washington, to respond to this concern. The third issue that I would like to mention. I think we are now in a very defensive situation, the ones who are supporting TTIP. So I think the ones who are fighting against TTIP, and their number is increasing, and I think it's only to increase, Joseph Stiglitz is basically suggesting that this treaty should be thrown to the dustbin of history. That's what he says. Of course, many others on the other side are suggesting that we should fight for it and try to get it done. And of course, the next rounds of negotiations should also try to get an agreement. As President Obama mentioned in Hanover just 10 days ago, time is not our ally. Because also in the US there is a democratic cycle which is now entering its final stage. Also in Europe we have Brexit, we have lots of other conversations, elections in France, elections in many places, so this is something that we should be very much concerned. So the ones who are in favor of TTIP, I think we should launch an operation that I would call it Save TTIP operation. As the others are organizing themselves, it's a Kill TTIP operation. This is where we are. And if we don't recognize the complexity of these issues and the fact that we really need to engage our citizenry in a true, transparent way and try to find on both ways a compromise that will make not only the ones who have an ideological issue with this kind of thing, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, they all have expressed doubts about this agreement. But I think if we are, as Romanians, I think that if you draw the line, I think with all the minuses of the current form, I think the plus, the need to get it done, is still prevalent or is still there. The pluses are more important than the minuses, but if we don't recognize that this is a very delicate time for this important conversation, then we have this issue. The last point is about not only the timing of the negotiations. This is where, of course, governments have to agree. President Obama, I think, is right in trying to get this thing done, negotiations, before the presidential elections. Of course, he wants to leave some form of legacy. That's natural for any outgoing president. But I also believe that if we don't get the negotiations closed in a decent and transparent way soon enough, then the unraveling of the conversation will continue. And the eventual ratification in national parliaments, European Parliament, and US Congress. Okay, in the US Congress, don't forget there is also a congressional race, not only a presidential race in the US. And if this negative spiral of conversation and emotion will continue to grow, it's only normal that politicians in many places will start to feel the heat and will try to adjust their positions and their votes in a certain way. So I think we should really engage this conversation in a different way than before. This is not an easy deal to be completed. I still believe that if on both sides we find the right balance and we respond to the natural concerns and the legitimate concerns of our citizenry, I think this deal is exceptionally important for the future of the transatlantic relationship. This is way beyond business. It's even way beyond jobs. It's about the rule of the game in global economy in the century to come. And I think we have to put these things in balance. And I think such a panel, and I'm closing here, should respond, and this is my encouragement to the ones who are on the panel, and thank you all for being with us, and Christian for moderating us. We have to really understand, also because of the findings of Greenpeace, that we are entering now even more uphill battle than we had before. And this is only good for Romania and our citizens, young and professionals and NGOs and trade unions and journalists and decision makers and government to really engage this in far more transparent and professional way. This is not something that can be kept behind closed doors anymore, even in Romania. That's, in a way, the good part of this conversation, because somehow we are forced to get out, speak up, and defend our positions in a democratic and hopefully decent and professional way.